Okay.
All right. Well, good morning, everybody. I'm really excited to have Christy Couchley here with us today to talk about natural photography. And I don't know if you've had the opportunity to see many of Christy's photos, but I do think one of her greatest strengths is being able to capture light in a really unique and interesting way to make her subjects really appear natural and really vibrant and alive. And I think she's a master at it. She will probably not brag on herself like that, but I just wanted to take a minute to just say thank you, Christy, for taking the time to share your expertise with us. It seems like quite a few of us fit into the category of it's a part of our jobs. We need to take photos for what we do. We probably also like to take them on the side for fun. But I know I can speak for this crowd that I like to shoot on auto. It's where I'm comfortable, and I want to take my photography to another level. And so looking forward to your insights today. We're going to turn it over to the presentation here. If at any time you have any problems on the chat with anything at all, please click on the little message button that's in the lower left part of your screen to pop up the conversation tab, and you can chime in, ask questions. I'll be watching that while Christy's speaking, and then at the end I'll be sure to ask her those questions so we have them recorded live for this presentation as well. But don't hesitate to pop a question up at any time, and we'll get to it as soon as we can. I also just wanted to alert you to one other thing. Up at the top of your screen on the blue tab, there is a little person with an arrow, and if you hover over it, it says pick a layout. You should be able to change the layout if you're having trouble seeing something or want to try something different. I've seen a few of your questions pop up in the conversation, so feel free to try that as well. And with that, Christy will let you take it over, and I'll get rid of our poll here.
Okay. Well, I am so honored to even be asked to do this. I don't ever consider myself an expert on really anything, so I feel like I've just tried to learn and grow, learn from people I respect, and continue to improve. So I appreciate the opportunity. I'm looking forward to hearing your questions and your input as well. See, we have a couple master photographers here too. So if at any point you want to hop in with anything, please just let me know. Just a little background about myself. I graduated from Oklahoma State University in '99 with an AgCom degree, so go Pokes. And my first job out of college was with the American Quarter Horse Association. I was a field editor for the Quarter Horse Journal, and a little while into that position, I was approached by John Deere and became a field editor for or regional editor, excuse me, for the Furrow magazine, and then eventually became the managing editor of Homestead magazine. From there, I was at a meeting for John Deere and met a John Deere dealer there. And long story short, we started dating, decided to get married, and I moved to Hoopeston, Illinois, which is his hometown, when we got married 13 years ago. My first job, when I moved here, I was the Director of Communications for the National Swine Registry in Lafayette, Indiana. And worked in that position for about 6 years. We started having babies, realized that it was probably going to be best for me to be more available for our family. And that's when I began Sealy Communications and then eventually Sealy Photography. The business started as a communications company for the agricultural industry, and that's still my primary business. I do writing and photography for a variety of publications and agencies. And then a few years into that position, into this career, I decided to pursue a dream that I'd had for a long time, which was to start doing portrait photography. And so began working my way into that business, and now have a photography studio here in Hoopeston, where I do several weddings, babies, seniors, families throughout the year too. So it's been a lot of fun. Love photography. I think it's just a fun creative outlet, and my style I feel like is a natural style. I try to avoid posing as much as I can and just try to capture the moments as they happen, whether that be for an agricultural client or for the portrait side of my business as well. And just let me see if I can figure out. There we go. Okay, so as in the poll, it sounds like several of us are shooting on auto. That's how I started as well, so I completely understand. I feel like first things first, shooting manual is going to be able to allow you to get the image that you have in your mind conveyed into that portrait. And it's important, I think, to shoot in that manual mode. Whenever your camera's on auto, you may have a vision in mind of what you see it appearing, but your camera is going to automatically adjust to what it believes you're wanting. So I first started shooting in manual when I was working with John Deere, and the art director there, Tom Sizemore, he's still the art director there, and he sent me out on my first shoot, and I shot in auto. I came back. I was so proud. At that point, we were shooting in slides. So we got out the loop, we got out the light box, started looking through the pictures, looked through all of them, and he said, okay, now where are your good ones? And so that was a real wake-up call to me that, oh goodness, I've got to step up my game here. And so it was just a lot of practice, and I think you can study it up, you can learn the calculations, learn the numbers, but the best way to really be an effective shooter in manual is just to do it over and over. It does become second nature as you do it more often. Cameras, of course, have the aperture priority or the shutter priority settings, and those can be very beneficial to be a baby step towards shooting in full manual. So if you're in a low light setting, you can do the aperture priority, and it's going to automatically set your shutter speed based on what aperture you feel like would work best for the situation. Likewise, shutter priority, you can set your shutter. If you're capturing fast movement, you can set your shutter speed high. It's going to set the aperture speed or aperture opening to what it thinks will work well for that shutter speed. So that's a way to manipulate it a bit more than just going straight auto, and gradually build your way up to shooting manual. Also, another first step would be to, if at all possible, shoot in RAW versus JPEG. With a RAW photo, you are able to manipulate that photo much more than a JPEG. A RAW file has a lot more data associated with it, so you can manipulate the photo and without it distorting the photo, without it ruining the quality. I try to shoot spot on as much as possible, but there's always those situations where you have gone from a low light setting to a high light setting and have not gotten the setting right on that first shot, or you're outdoors, you're shooting in full sun, a cloud comes, it messes things up. So RAW, you're able to capture, to bring out those pictures more effectively without ruining the image. The drawback of that is that RAW files take up a whole lot more storage space. They're a much larger file because there's so much more data associated with it. So you have to account for that. I use Lightroom to do my photo editing, and so I import through Lightroom and straight onto an external hard drive so that I'm not filling up my computer as quickly with those large files. That the storage issue is a big issue. Right now my computer is getting a larger storage hard drive put into it. I'm using our backup computer from home, so it is something to keep in mind, but it is absolutely worth it. I feel like my photography took a leap in quality when I made that step from JPEG to RAW several years ago. So with any shoot, I feel like I always start the shoot with a pose that I'm probably not going to use, whether it be a portrait session with a family or whether that's for a session for an agricultural client. This family, I've known this guy forever, and his wife and kids now, but he was very open with me that he was not really looking forward to this session at all, and he was giving me a pretty hard time about it. And so I knew that he was going to give me a run for my money in just getting those natural pictures that I tried to capture. So we started with that picture on the left there, and I just had them stand as they normally would. I said, just stand if you were just standing and chatting with me. And so that's what they did. And I feel like it's a nice picture. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it. They're all smiling and looking nice. But they got used to being in front of the camera. They got used to me snapping away, and they got more comfortable with me. And so then within 5 minutes, I had shot the second picture, which I feel like is a much more telling, natural photo of this family. They love to have a good time. Their kids are awesome. And I feel like that picture truly shows the family that they are. Same goes for an agricultural shoot. This guy is just an awesome guy, a Florida dairy farmer. He's 90 years old. In an agricultural setting, I think a lot of us know that it works well if we can do the interview first, because they become more comfortable with us from the start, because we've had a chance to sit and chat, and they get comfortable with us to begin with. That was the case on this. We had done the interview already. He felt pretty comfortable with me. But in that first shot, that was the very first picture I took of him on the left. I said, just stand how you normally would stand, and that's what he gave me, and it's a nice shot. But within a few minutes, I had him just kind of lean on the fence and tell me a story. And I feel like the one on the right, again, shows his personality a lot more. He looks more comfortable and relaxed. He was just telling me a story. We were laughing about something he said. That's when I snapped the picture, and I feel like that's a more comfortable, relaxed, natural picture of this man. Toward the end of the session, I feel as you move into a session, you can start to move closer. I do not ever want to just immediately get right into someone's face with that camera at the beginning of a session, because I don't think they're going to be too comfortable with that. But we had gone quite a while into the session, and then I wanted to capture some nice close-up portraits for this project for my client. I like both of these images. I feel like they both tell a lot about his personality and his character. The left one, I just asked him to stand. I was on a staircase. I had him look up at me, and that was his natural look. And it's nice. I really do like the image. But in that second shot, I think maybe it's a little bit easier for a woman to do this in this situation, but with a man, with him, I believe I had said something like, oh, you never knew you were going to be a cover model, did you? Or a cover boy or supermodel. And he just thought that was pretty funny and gave a nice little laugh. And that was the resulting image there. So I'm not afraid to say something goofy, which anyone that knows me probably is not surprised by that either. But just anything to try to get them to just relax and have that real smile and that real laugh, and for their personality to really shine through. Likewise, I also like to step back. And I feel like a lot of the nice images that we can capture are when we step back and we just allow a person to be in their element, doing what they love, telling their own story. The little gal on the left, that's Katrina Huffstetler's daughter, Lauren, and her horse. And then on the right, that gal shows hogs across the country and has grown up doing that. They both love their animals. And so all I had to do in those cases was step back. Being in the industry that I'm in and doing a lot of agricultural photography as my career, I also get asked to do family portraits and senior portraits of people who have livestock. And so when they bring an animal to a shoot, it's obviously an animal that they have a relationship with and one that's special to them. So really, in those cases, all I have to do is ask them to just love on their animal, love on that heifer, love on that hog, love on your horse. And they have that relationship, and that bond just comes through by just asking them to pretend I'm not there and just do their thing with the animal they're with. Same in this situation. This is my brother and two of the guys that help him on the ranch he manages in Oklahoma. This is a house that's in rubble, basically, that's on the ranch that they work on. And each year I go and capture images for them to use in their promotional materials. I ask them to just sit and just look at the ranch and take it all in. That's what they did. I feel like it's just them in their moment. If you wouldn't know it was a portrait, you wouldn't know I was even there. And that's, I feel like, those type of images can be used in so many different situations and be effective. And you might recognize this gal too. But obviously, when I'm doing family sessions or engagements or weddings, there's a lot of couples. But I've been asked quite a few times as well for agricultural clients to take portraits of a husband and wife for whatever the need may be. And of course, I'll get the one of the two of them smiling nicely at the camera from a variety of distances. And those are always nice to have. But then I will step back and I'll let the husband make the wife laugh. And so usually what I'll do is I'll ask the husband to whisper something sweet in his wife's ear. I would say 9 times out of 10 it's not sweet. It's probably inappropriate or just a joke. But I'll wait because eventually that wife is going to laugh. The husband's going to laugh. And that's when I snap the picture. And so that's when you can get those natural smiles and laughs, is just to let them do their thing. They know what is funny to each other. They know their little inside jokes. And that's when you get the true emotion in the pictures. Same goes for family sessions and for families for any type of shoot. You can usually peg pretty quickly who the jokester in the family is, who the ornery little one is. So you can usually allow them to be the ones to make the rest of the family laugh. Ask them to tell a joke, ask them to do something silly. It gets the whole family interacting with each other. Again, if you wouldn't know that I had taken that picture, you wouldn't know that I was there. It was them in their moment. They were laughing about something the little one had said. And that captured their family, their personality in that moment. Sometimes, and many times for agricultural shoots, we're shooting one person. This gal, it was a senior session that I was on, and I do several, with any family session, with any agricultural session, I'm shooting individuals of each person as well as groups. So there's a lot of this to be done. Usually in this sort of a situation, I've got someone behind the camera or standing beside me or behind me, if it's a mom, dad, sister, brother, who are watching things as they progress. And so I will sometimes ask them to tell a joke or say something or dance a goofy dance to get the person to laugh. And in this case, I've been known to ask someone to look at a tree over my shoulder or look at a light post over my shoulder, and that just tell them, that is the funniest tree you have ever seen in your life, and you are just cracking up. And it's amazing that people can really turn it on pretty well if they need to. And I'm sure that's what I did with her there, was just, that's the funniest tree you've ever seen, crack up at it. And she did a great job with it. So sometimes that can work as well, just to get that natural smile, the natural laugh, not that forced, frozen smile that we're all trying to avoid. Kind of like getting them in their situation or in their own setting. Getting a subject moving can help. And I know we all do that in many times for agricultural shoots. If it's walking through the herd of cattle or walking through the field or by the field. This gal, I was doing a family session for them. This was a bull that she had shown since he was a calf, and they had spent a lot of time together. I just had them walk up the lane toward me together. That was at their farm. It was a special setting to them, special bull to her, and they really loved that image just because it was not posed, not formal, just them in the setting that they love. In this situation, and in many situations, as you go through an interview, as you begin a session, you start to learn about things that are special and important and unique to a family or to a person. This family, they are all team ropers, and so this little guy couldn't wait to get his start in team roping as well. So they happened to bring the ropes along, had him swing his rope while we took the pictures. So, and again, they loved this picture because it was their family, and it was something so important to them, and tells a lot about their family as a whole, too. Jennifer mentioned that I like to play with light some, and I think it can be a lot of fun. I think sun flare is something that people either love or avoid. And so with any session, I have some agricultural clients that love the sun flare. So I will always try to grab that if the weather conditions are right for them on any shoot I go on. But I will shoot a variety with and without, no matter what session I'm on. This was an engagement session I did for a livestock couple. They're actually getting married this weekend, so that'll be fun. But when you're shooting sun flare, the thing to remember is manual settings are critical on this. And what you do, you will set your setting on the subjects without the sun flare coming through, so that you're getting the exposure right for them. Then move your camera over and let that sun come through at whatever position you want it to on the subjects. But that then allows that sun flare to come through, but they're also still in proper exposure. You can still see them as well. But I think it can be a lot of fun to play with that, and it just adds, I feel like, some depth, emotion to a photo as well. I also love silhouettes, and I feel like I may be a little biased, but I think Oklahoma has the best sunsets. And so these next few images were all taken in Oklahoma at the same ranch that my brother's at. And that's not something you can plan. I think we all know that. I think we all try to capture these from time to time. You can't just dictate a sunset and what it's going to look like, but when it presents itself, we've got to move fast, and we've got to try to capture that if we can. In any sort of silhouette situation, you set your exposure for the sky, and then can darken it up as needed. But again, manual settings are important in order to get the camera's exposure set correctly to expose for the sky, not for the subjects. So that was the case on this photo as well, exposing for the sky. And again here, exposed for the sky. I bumped it down a little bit just to get her a little bit blacker and a little bit more darked out in the picture. But it's a good way to start, at least on the exposure. And, you know, we can always prepare as much as we can, but you never know exactly what's going to happen in a session, and they can sometimes make the most fun pictures of all. This was a family session I did. It was in a pasture with all their old show heifers and now cows. This gal just walked right into the frame right as I took that picture, and a lot of people thought it was Photoshop, but it wasn't. She just walked right in. I think it got more likes on Facebook than any picture I've taken, and you know, it obviously could not have been planned. So. And the family loved it because that was one of their favorite heifers, and she really took the stage in that picture. So we can always have fun no matter what the setting. So that's basically what I have today. I would love to hear what questions you have. If you have anything to add on anything I've said, I'd love to have that as well.
Don't all jump at once. I see a lot of you are muted, so feel free to type if you're more comfortable typing, or if you're not muted, go ahead and shout out a question. Sometimes it's hard with multiple groups, but we'd love to know.
Christy, this is Miranda. You mentioned stopping it down when you're doing a silhouette photo. Are you bracketing that and just, stopping it down like a half stop and then full and such, or how do you typically do that?
I will typically set my exposure for what I think it needs to be based on the guideline in the screen, in the viewfinder. But then I'll take a look at it then once I've taken it. Bracketing would work. That way, obviously, I know there's the auto bracket feature on some cameras, but I will typically just shoot a variety of exposures, like you said, just to try to, when I get it back on my computer, see which one I feel like works the best of all. But yes, I usually don't just set it and go with it. I'll usually try a few different things just to make sure I've got it before the moment's gone.
Sure.
Christy, can you see the questions over in the conversation? I'll go ahead and ask again, but just so you know, there's a few popping up. But let's start with Diane's question. What kind or brand of cameras do you use? And can you talk a little bit about the lens that everyone should consider as a starter kit?
Sure. I just upgraded my camera a few months ago to a D4S. There's a D5 that's Nikon. So the D4S was considered top of the line until the D5 came out recently, but I'm thrilled with it. And I'm a Nikon girl, and that's just what I've always shot on since my John Deere days. That's what I got used to back in the film days, and that's what I've stuck with. As far as lenses, I use a variety of prime lenses. I do have a few zoom lenses as well, but prime meaning that you can't adjust them. They're one focal length. I use my 85 millimeter probably 95% of the time. It's a nice portrait lens. It will give you great depth of field and really blur out that background well. And I also have a 24 millimeter that I use quite a bit if I'm needing more of a wide angle shot, if I'm needing to get more of the landscape in the photo, I will use that 24. But for portraits, my 85 millimeter I use almost solely. I also have a 70-200, one of the long lenses. I'll use that at cattle shows just because now that I'm a show mom and most of the cattle shows that I'm shooting are from the mom perspective, not from being in the ring, I need to have that zoom so that I can get in closer since I can't physically move my body to where I want to be necessarily. So those are probably the three that I use primarily. I also have a macro lens too, now that I'm thinking through my lenses here, a 90 millimeter that I will use for detail shots. I don't really use it for portraits at all, but the 90 millimeter I will use especially for weddings to do the ring shots or flowers when I really want to get in close on one tiny subject. I use that quite a bit in that situation as well.
Okay, Casey asks, she likes doing an interview first, but when lighting doesn't allow for that, how do you get them comfortable when starting with a photo shoot?
That's a good question, and especially if you're getting to a subject's place in the morning, early morning, you want to get that nice light while it's still available. And so I usually then kind of revert to the portrait mentality of just taking a few pictures. Just tell them you're setting your camera. I do that a lot. Just, oh, don't worry about what I'm doing here. You just talk or relax. I'm just getting my camera set. They get used to hearing that shutter snap. They get used to being in front of the camera, and just kind of make some chit chat with them. I just feel like if you can establish a relationship with them, even if it's in 5 minutes, but just that, hey, I'm not a bad person, I'm not going to hurt you, this is going to be fun, then that can really help loosen them up to get right into that portrait session as well.
Great. Katie's asking, do you ever use extra lighting, reflectors, flashes, etc.? If so, can you share a couple of quick tips for beginners who want to play with extra light sources?
Yes, and that's the subject that I am still learning a lot about. And I feel like the more I learn about it, the more I know there is to learn. Yes, but in a short answer, yes, I do. A lot of times I can use my on-camera flash and bounce. For example, I did a newborn session on Friday. I was using the natural light in the room mainly, but I also knew that light was kind of harsh coming in from the window on the right. So I put on my on-camera flash and adjusted it to where it was bouncing off of the opposite wall, just to provide a little fill for the shadow side. I also do use reflectors, and I will, it's really nice if you can have even the husband or wife, or for the senior, for a kid, if the parent is there, just anyone can hold a reflector. You can show them within 30 seconds what to do, and they can handle it. So I use reflectors a lot whenever I've got the backlighting and I just want to bounce some fill light onto the face of the subject. And so I would say investing in a cheap little pop-up reflector can be really helpful as you are getting started with that. They're super easy to use. You just play with it to see where the positioning is going to bounce that light onto the shadows and take those shadows out well. They also work really well when you're doing a sun flare situation, just to get a little more light onto the face of the subject that you're shooting. I don't know if that answered your question at all, but if you have more specific questions, I'll be happy to answer those too.
Christy, when you use a reflector, do you, I know sometimes I've seen you bring a little helper with you before to hold the reflector. Any tips or thoughts about that, or how you do it when it's just you on your own?
Yeah, it gets tricky. Reflectors are really tricky if you don't have someone there with you, or if there's not somebody standing there. I have on occasion been able to prop them up on the ground. With reflectors, basically what you're doing is you're taking the natural light you have, and it will be coming from usually behind or to the side is where your natural light is. You're using that reflector to bounce light onto the shadow side of whatever it is you're shooting. So if you can find a way to position that reflector, it's just a matter of looking at the subject. And there's probably a more technical way to do it, but the way I do it is wherever the light is coming from, I try to get on the opposite of it, and then just play with the reflector a bit until I see that the shadows I'm trying to fill in are filled in. And so they do make reflector stands as well. I don't have one or use one, but that is an option too. If you're on your own, you can have a stand and then adjust it on that stand as well.
Carrie says, great advice, especially the little tidbits like look at the ranch and take it all in. I know depth of field was a hard concept for me to understand initially with the balance that has to happen. Could you talk about that a little?
Sure. With depth of field, especially with portraits, it's always so nice to have that nice depth of field where the background is blurred out. You just see the subject nice and sharp. By doing that, you're setting your you are going to set your aperture to a very small setting. And by doing that, you have to be really careful because if you get too close, you can, for example, think you've got, I always try to focus on the eyes and get the eyes in focus. I feel like if they're in focus, everything else looks good. But because it's such a shallow depth of field, there are going to be parts that are not, the whole face will not be entirely in focus if you get very close on the subject. So what I try to do is focus on the eyes, that make the eyes really pop with the sharpness. If the ears, if the neck, if those things are not fully sharp, I don't feel like that's a problem in most cases. But you do have to be careful, and you do need to really pay attention to what the focus is on when you're doing a portrait with shallow depth of field.
Maggie asked a great question too. How do you set your white balance? Could you talk about that a little bit?
I can. I set my white balance using, can you see this? I can't see my own screen, so I don't know if it's showing or not. Do you see this? Okay. This is an Expo disc. I'm not sure, Maggie, if you've used one of these or seen one of these, but this has been like my life-saving tool. I just throw this around my neck. I have it with me on every shoot I go on. It's different on a Canon, and I don't know exactly the specifics on how that works. For a Nikon, I can set my camera to be an automatic, to set my white balance on it instead of choosing one of the automatic settings. I then place this over the lens, do a test shot. I tell my camera I'm setting my white balance and exposure right now. Put this over the lens. I then adjust my exposure to where it's reading correctly, snap one shot, and that sets my white balance for me and my exposure. Most of the time it's spot on. I do have to do a couple test shots then to make sure it's absolutely correct. But this has helped me so much in getting my white balance right, probably 90% of the time from the start. I find that sometimes the many different white balance choices on a camera work pretty well if you need that to do it that way. And I will sometimes revert to that if I'm using a flash. I'll set it to the flash white balance, and usually it's pretty close. But this Expo disc has been a lifesaver, and I panic when I can't find it right away if I'm getting ready to start a shoot and can't find it readily.
Christy, this is Miranda again. When you're going in between settings where, say, you're outside in shade and then going to be in the sun, or maybe going even from inside to outside on the same shoot, do you ever use those, and I don't even know what they're officially called, like the U1 and U2 settings, the preset, like, so you set your white balance and everything and then you save it in your camera?
Oh, no, I've never done that, but that sounds like that would be really handy. I should maybe look into that.
It does sound like it would be handy, and I was hoping you could tell me how to do it. I guess I'll have to get up my...
Could. Oh, goodness. This is where the other expert needs to jump in and talk about that. I use this. I see that Carrie's asking, too, to repeat what that is. So, but yeah, Miranda, this is what I use all the time. It's called an Expo disc. It looks like the website is www.expodisc.com. I think I got it like on B&H Photography probably. But I just keep, like I said, I keep it around my neck. So if I'm indoors, I snap it, get my white balance set. If we head outdoors, I just throw it up there, set it. It takes 30 seconds, not even that. It doesn't take hardly any time at all to do this, and I just continually am adjusting it based on this. But I need to look into those settings because that sounds very handy. Thank you, Jennifer, for putting that up there.
Yeah, I was like, I just went and checked. I hope that's right. It looked right.
Yes, that's good.
Well, we have a few more minutes. Are there any last questions for Christy? If not, I'll just do a quick plug here. First of all, Christy, thanks again. We really appreciate it. I think you had tons of great information you shared with us and great tips and advice. And I've seen her in action. She's taken lots of photos for our family, and she's just wonderful with her subjects, and she makes it really fun. My kids actually really enjoy getting their photo taken by Christy. If you know my kids, maybe that's not a surprise, but she really makes it fun, even for Dan, who does not like to get his photo taken. So I will have this posted on our LPC social media sites, so you'll be able to see this as a YouTube video if you want to refer to it later and take notes from it. I also want to put a plug in for our next one. Our next Coffee and Collaboration is going to be another fun one. It's going to take place on September 28th at 10 a.m. Central Time, and we're going to talk about social media. And one of the things we're going to be exploring is, we get all these analytics, and that's great, but now what do we do with them? How do we use analytics to help take our social media efforts to a new level? And we'll also just explore some of the different analytics out there that you can obtain and so forth. And so we're going to be doing that chat with Katrina Huffstutler, Jenna McRell, and Claire Masker. So I'm looking forward to that and gaining insights. They're all doing great things on social media, and it'll be fun to be able to see how they are achieving such greatness out there. So thanks again, everybody. And if there are no last questions or thoughts, we'll be in touch with you guys in a month. And we really appreciate you sharing this with people in your offices and your colleagues. We really want to get the word out. We had a great attendance today, but we would love to see this double in size with more of our colleagues who don't get to attend our events as well being involved. So thanks again.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Christy.
Sure.